Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is a grumpy old guy gaming at the station, one of the many quality tabletop role-playing game and video game chat destinations. We're back with some Dragon Quest 2 and a bit more Dungeons & Dragons, TTRPG, what have you chat. So it'll be a fun, chill experience. As you can see, AGOGG's got about 400 experience to next level. Orfeo, I believe his name was, the Prince of Canik, our compatriot in this quest, and one of 3 descendants of Erdrick, counting ourselves, and the Princess of Moonbrook in that number. On this grand quest to save the world as one does in an RPG. He needs 172 experience, and we're going to be going ahead and leveling up a bit more and probably going after the Silver Key today, if I remember correctly. Again, Dragon Quest II, the keys are permanent, but you need to go questing for them. Also want to throw a couple quick warnings out here as we get a couple slimes. Recording this early-ish on a Monday morning, so at some point my son's school alarm is going to go off and we're going to hear all sorts of footsteps and whatnot going. Also, for my son, I have to give a slight spoiler warning out here because he's been in the vein of watching my videos lately, and this one's going to have some plot points for the old tabletop RPG campaign world. Not going to get too crazy in the weeds with it, because aside from overarching big picture things, I don't like planning a whole ton out. I kind of want my players to figure out how the world's going to interact with the overarching things and their characters, and come to that sort of composite storytelling, sort of blissful area that you're aiming for, where everyone's having fun at the table and the story just unfolds before y'all. Put AGOGG on the big slug here. I think Orfeo's getting to the point where he should be able to take out a slime. Oh yeah, especially with a 23-point crit. Not mad about that at all. Now the campaign world. They actually both were former co-workers at one point, but it's a husband and wife couple, and they're coming over a few weeks back to play the first session, and I believe we left off. I had just talked about making the little binders with the quick start rules, which gave them plenty of margin space for scratch, because I, in my usual way, was far too hurried. And I kind of just... I have a printer at home, but it's junk. I still can't get it to connect to my internet network. So I kind of just gave up and just put the stuff I wanted printed out with some basic instructions on a flash drive, and never really mentioned formatting or sizing or anything. And my wife was nice enough to print them out, but they were all dead center on a full sheet of paper. So they now have a pamphlet with a lot of margin room. And a little scratch pad. I got little, like, legal pad 3 packs, the little tiny notebook size ones, not the full size, and slid that into the pocket folder. So it's a nice little setup. But they're coming over, and I had this great idea. I'm already putting myself in a little sarcastic bubble here. One of my pet peeves, it seems, when it comes to storytelling, is how flippantly game worlds just handle time travel and extraplanar travel. And that's just been personal experience. I know not every experience is the same, and that there are probably people who have balanced it beautifully and I just haven't seen the work, or maybe haven't paid as much attention as I should have to that work. But it seems like every time I get into something and they get on this subject, the people are in full control of the time travel, and time just becomes like taking the highway. Like, time is a mysterious thing. The whole concept of measured time to me just seems to be something that we as people do to come to grips with mortality a bit easier, and just sort of be able to gauge our progress in another quantifiable measure. I could be off base with that, but that's how it's always felt to me. At least that's how it's... I guess I can't say always, but as long as I've been thinking deeply about it, that's about as relatable as it's been to me. So the whole concept of time being this really manipulatable thing where people can just go in and out and affect grand events, it just seems a touch flimsy to me. So in my campaign world, one of the first things I put out there for myself is that there would be a passage of time, but time is essentially going to be a raging river that things cannot really go against. It's going forward at the rate it goes. At least for now. And that's going to be a phrase I end up using a lot talking about this campaign. I get the feeling right away. At least for now, that's where I'm at. But I decide I'm going to start with an event way back in the past that's going to be a much bigger deal than it seemed at the time. We were starting at level 0, but I didn't want to run a traditional funnel. Because again, my player base either started around or got very used to 5th edition. And I'm not going to blame that on 5th edition either. Goodness knows. The missus started in 3rd edition, and the concept of losing a character is equally mortifying for her, and I think that honestly comes down to the amount of time you invest in character creation in these games more than anything else. Take a quick powder here at the end. We've made it up to Cannock Castle in the game as I sort of regroup. By now, if you're used to this, you sort of know my semi-rambling style. And we'll be bopping back and forth here. Apologies if that's not your jam. But it does kind of fit with my stream of consciousness a bit, where I can dip in and out of each and sort of compose my thoughts on the next. Yes, we do wish to continue the quest. The big thing we're looking for out of Orfeo is to get the antidote spell up and running, because when we go for that silver key, we're going to be facing a lot of poison. Now, as I am running a level 0 event, they didn't pick classes. In fact, they didn't pick ancestries. I didn't even get to that point. On the Arcane Library Discord, somebody was nice enough to post a link to a 4-slot character roster sheet, and that was included in the list of things I needed printed out, and I got a few for myself, just for notation as a game master, having all of the characters' vitals right there. Saves me writing it out on a sheet of notebook paper, but I also got one each for one of my players. And the way I was going to work this is, rather than throw a funnel together, as there was already a little bit of optimism, it was themed in a positive light, but I could tell there was a little bit of trepidation about the old mortality and old school D&D sort of trope, where the old school game is where the characters die a bunch. So I knew I wanted to take them through something a bit more linear than a traditional funnel. But at level 0, there's always that chance, you know. Really, the first few levels of an RPG, your character's only as hardy as the die rolls. One bad roll can take you out. That's just the way it goes. Level 0, even a good roll may not save you. So I print out these 4 character sheets, and my thought is, each character is going to start with a luck token. Luck tokens are something you use in 5th edition. It's like, I want to say inspiration, where you could use it to get a reroll on something. And I like starting each session with 1. But the way I was going to run this level 0 thing is the first character gets 1. The second character, if you have to go to a second, gets 2, third gets 3, fourth gets 4. So each time you go down the list, you have that many more chances to sort of escape death and save away. Whereas any surviving character slots, you could just sort of roll up stat blocks if you'd like them spare, which you could obviously do anyway. But I also gave the incentive of a little bonus gold for level 1 character creation. That we sadly haven't got to yet with this group, because the session went amazingly well, but we wrapped up just shy of that due to time, and the last couple weeks it's kind of been a little tough to get a schedule going here. Life gets in the way, you know? But that was my plan. Another tweak I made to the luck tokens, rather than it just being a flat reroll, is I gave them the option on a die roll to either reroll something of theirs or to force a roll of mine to be rerolled. So if I score a critical and a lot of my rolls, I'll do either open on the table or I'll announce them as they hit so they know what's coming. But yeah, I gave them the option to force a reroll, and I also borrowed a little something out of the Black Sword hack, I believe is the first place I heard it from, that I thought was brilliant. I'm sure other systems do it as well, but I want to say Black Sword hack is where I remember seeing it, where you can force a success by sort of bargaining with your DM as to a sort of collateral payment for the success. I think the example I remember hearing is if you failed on a stealth check and it's kind of make or break for the party, you could change that into a success but leave visual evidence like footprints and stuff. So you got by this time, but more than likely the monsters will spot the tracks and be waiting for you on the way back out. I knew adding that in would make it the sort of default choice of a luck token, because if you have the option to possibly succeed as opposed to the option of definitely succeeding, you're probably taking the guaranteed success. That was a lot of definites and probables in one sentence. I apologize for some sloppy grammar there. Just making our way back to good old Middenhall Castle here. Not really facing anything of challenge, and it's starting to show. Like, getting Orfeo to level 6 is a bit of a grind here, so I think we're going to stop in here for a quick refresher, then make our way back up to the spring. Nice thing about Middenhall is it's always going to be cheap. Wasn't even that necessary for a rest, but we took it. So the characters are all set, and we just do a quick story event to set a little bit of background in. Didn't bother picking classes or ancestries like I had said, but we did pick some occupations. My wife's character was a librarian and school teacher, As tends to be the vein, she loves playing the bookish sorts. And my guests played an urchin who was fighting out in the streets for food, and a cabbage merchant, which instantly led to so many potential Avatar The Last Airbender jokes, it wasn't even funny. If I recall correctly, we were fairly restrained on those, but a few will happen, as they were bound to had nobody picked this specific route. But they're in town, and they're preparing for this big celebratory parade that's going to start because they happen to live in a town that's the birthplace of a very notable NPC, the General Taragnus. And General Taragnus, she was coming down to marshal this parade, and then just in the moment things were getting set up, our cabbage vendor was out in the stalls. Our urchin was finding a way to sneak a cabbage for themselves. And the crowd was just lining up. The sky started turning red. And it was just a lot of RP interaction at this point. I believe we did have a fist fight with another urchin. That may have been the height of action at this point. It was just a lot of talking, a lot of warming up, getting into things. But as the sky turns red and things are looking a little crazy out there, orcs start coming down over the hill. This is where I'm going to get a little spoilery, because I framed these two events like there was something linking them. In all honesty, there's nothing directly linking them. Orfeo just hit level 6. That's great. And he learned a new spell. Is it Antidote? It is. Okay, cool. We're still going up to the spring for the free heal. But we're going to stay on this northern part here and just sort of use Cannock Castle. I want to say would be our best sort of... I think that's our best landmark to start going after the Silver Key. We may still be a little underleveled for there, but we'll give it the old college try. I could hear the alarm going off upstairs. So the orcs raiding the village just happened to be bad timing for everyone, including the orcs. The sky turning red is a far more cosmic event. And the thing that triggered it is going to have world-ranging effects. Here are some babbles, and again, very fitting for the way I speak. They're little puddles of green slime that poison the crap out of you if you're not careful. Got through that rather easy. I promise that won't happen every time. One thing it absolutely did, though, was it leveled the town. It was a nuke. Everything went under. As the orcs hit, everyone just sort of went into the schoolroom and barricaded themselves and hoped for the best, and the best just didn't happen. They all just sort of perished, but instead of, you're dead, that's it, their souls were kind of lingering. And to tie into the Shadow Dark theme, I think I went as far to be very on the nose in my narration, literally calling them shadows in a sea of dark. Because I'm a ham like that. But they were there, and they eventually reincarnated outside of a cave as salt miners. Once again, following the old tropes, classics are classics for a reason. They don't know how they became salt miners. They just kind of are. And what I ended up running was the Lottery of the Lost 0-level adventure in the Unnatural Selection supplement. We had we had late back to that one. So I had the PDF of it, read through it, made a couple of augments and tweaks to sort of fit the style on the table a little better. But kind of just wanted to run that as it was going to be a fun thing. Tone down some of the monster lethality a little bit. But we're getting ready to run this section. And I've got 3 characters wondering how they got where they got. And as they're stumbling through, they're realizing they don't recognize each other. But they kind of know. They kind of know without knowing, and there's sort of this draw between them. And then something really fun happened about halfway through this. And I was hoping that it was going to happen in some respect, but the way it all played out was just too good to be true. One of the characters died. My wife touched a glyph on an obelisk that was sitting next to a statue of a halfling. The halfling wasn't a statue, it was the last being that touched this specific glyph, because it's a save or be paralyzed. And without investigating too deeply or looking at too much of anything, just sort of blindly went forward and saw the statue reaching for the glyph and decided to do the same. Failed the save and turned to stone. This should be another herb. Great place to stock up on free herbs here, by the way. If you play Dragon Quest 2, just go to the spring and hit up that spot for free medicinal herbs. Never hurts, especially when you have to conserve that MP for antidote spells. Just keep rolling along here. Now that in itself was kind of fun. And then it instantly got into legendary status because of a simple decision that once again started out as a beautiful trope in gaming. Because if you lose a character in an RPG, the simplest way to make a new one, especially at such an early stage where absolutely nothing or very little is established, is just bring in their twin, their doppelganger, their lookalike. And that's exactly what my wife did. Her original character was named Kara, and she brought in her twin sister, Tara. Now, if you're following along, then you've already noticed some really fun interactions that are about to take place. But these characters, the original 3 that started, were reincarnated from another timeline. Not so much another timeline, but another place in time. I should phrase that a bit less sloppily. So they're coming from a different time entirely. And we never had mentioned one way or another if Kara even had siblings in that previous timeline. She was just the bookish sort that, taught school and ran a library. More importantly, she may or may not have had siblings, but those siblings would have never met the urchin and the cabbage vendor on that day. That's one side of the coin here, which is going to make for some really fun interactions. The second side of the coin is that the other 2 characters, my urchin and my cabbage vendor, they're going to have no knowledge of Kara and Tara's childhood in this time period. This is going to throw them for a loop. I need to take a second here and just check out the status of AGOGG and Orfeo so I can see the equipment. Copper sword, leather armor, leather shield. That's about as good as we could hope for AGOGG. Orfeo's got chain sickle, leather armor, leather shield. At some point, we do want to get Orfeo into some chainmail. I believe he could wear chainmail. This game is actually nice enough to let you know whether or not a character could use an item before you spend the gold on it. So you got that going for you. We're going to try conserving our magic points a little bit here. Pardon me. Throat's getting a little froggy. So you've got two PCs that remember the fallen player character from an entirely different period of time. Meanwhile, the player whose character had fallen has an entirely different thing going on. I know I just said we're going to conserve, but we need to get rid of poison enemies. Yeah, there's our first poison hit. We'll probably burn an antidote on that. Now, if you've played D&D or any similar system, you're saying, hey, no big deal. Just got to cure the petrification. Well, another great gimmick of Shadow Dark is that there aren't a whole lot of ways to fix death. There is no resurrection magic in the game, at least to date. And even things like a full restoration from petrification seem to fall in the purview of, like, the wish spell, at best. Which I think is a fantastic way of doing it, because it really hammers home that your choices are going to matter. Yeah, we can already sort of tell that we're gonna need to back out of this area. Big rats, living up to their name, but giving us some decent XP. I don't want to burn that. Let's go ahead and use an herb on Orfeo. Just kind of keeping hit points as high as we can. And we're going to take this... I want to say this winding path here takes us to where we need, although we may have shot it a little north. I don't have an accessory map open, which is kind of my mistake. I really should have some sort of auxiliary means of looking this stuff up while I play, just for the convenience of getting to the damn spot, as opposed to, you know, just stumbling around and making you guys watch. But the whole goal of this thing is to chat about RPGs, so I think it works fine either way. If you have a preference, feel free to let me know. Took care of them cobras in a hurry. Does feel like we're a bit underleveled for this spot. I think that's the cave we're looking for, though, so this may just work out. Put AGOGG on the cobra. Fireball the babble, and we'll take care of the big rat when we get to it. No poison, so that's a plus. One of the things, right away, my wife threw out is she wanted to find a way to cure Kara. Because she hadn't read overly deep in this system yet. And that is certainly a noble goal. But I know going in here that that's not going to be such an easy thing. Speaking of not such an easy thing, that's a healer. We're going to have to take care of that healer before anything else here. Oh, the healer is immune to magic. That teaches me. Okay, we got out of it real quick though. As the name implies, those little floating jellyfish will just keep the party rolling forever. Pick up a nice chunk of experience there. Hey, medical herb. We'll need that. Probably sooner rather than later. Nothing there. Kind of feels like the wizardry thing where every time we enter a room we get an encounter, but I'm cool with that. Nice. So when she asked about it, I'm sitting there thinking about the options. And initially in my head, I kind of want to rip the band-aid off and be like, hon, I don't think it's that kind of game. But I stop short and I say maybe, because tabletop RPGs are unique in a sense that there are no definites. Whatever you need a game to be for the overall enjoyment level to be at its paramount. That's what your game has. So I threw the maybe out there because I plan on running this campaign world for a very long time. And who's to say that by the end of it, there isn't a way? Who's to say that even if there isn't a way within the game world, that I don't just homebrew one? Or that my characters don't quest to find a way? Got another level up for Orfeo here, so things are going well there. Okay, there's the stairs down. I want to say we just follow the path down. Could be wrong here, but I think this is the way to the key. Big cobras and magicians. Magicians scare the heck out of me because of Fireball. Okay, that could have gone worse. Picking up a nice chunk of change, too. Now, it's entirely possible by the end of this they decide that silver key, folks. We did it. It's entirely possible by the end of this that they also decide that even though they've quested all this time, the cure may not be as important as warning people the dangers. Also, it gives a fantastic out if ever my wife wants to switch to another character, which is another thing that is entirely possible. It's going to be a big world. I'm going to be giving expanded game materials out in different areas. And Shadow Dark caps at level 10. It's a slower progression to level 10, but 10 is 10 all the same. And a year from now, who's to say that she wouldn't have done everything with Kara that she wanted to? Or hits max level and just needs to put her in semi-retirement until we start running some real high-level endgame stuff. Maybe we go into some other areas and want to run something a little lower level with some newer characters. So it gives that great sort of out of going back and visiting where her sister sort of remains and perhaps retires and stays close. Mind you, all of these possibilities popped up again at about the halfway point of this adventure. We didn't even get terribly far into the thing. Army ants. They're not the worst, but they are recruiter enemies. Like that. We do have to watch because we're getting low on resources here. But it's also not hurting my feelings that they're coming out because, again, they don't hit terribly hard. At some point, they're going to stop coming out. And in the meantime, this is just extra experience. There we go. That's our army ants down. I think we started with 3 and killed about 5 or 6. Not a bad battle overall. Let's go ahead and use a couple more herbs. The inventory is really thinning out here, but it was well used. Definitely can't be using much more in the way of fireballs and everything. Just kind of gotta trust Orfeo's physical attack at this point. That poison is just sort of lingering overhead. Every encounter like this is just kind of a deep breath moment for shots like that. Got over 500 gold, so that's not bad. Yeah, gotta go under these. Fight the cobra, fight the rat. The rest of the dungeon went exceedingly well. We had a spider battle, which worked beautifully because I threw out a couple minion spiders, and at the point they killed them and were ready to turn back around, down from the ceiling in almost that Skyrim Bleak Falls Barrow manner, the giant spider descends and the real battle begins. So that was a fun little thing. And since spiders are inherently creepy to 80% of the people I've ever gamed with, got a couple of the heebies and or jeebies at the table. There was a wonderful little segment with a 3 rooms set up for a trap. That I just sort of had to fill in the gaps myself on this. But it led to such an interesting way that things went down. Because at this point, they're catching on that everything could be of potential value. It's a slot-based inventory system. They don't have a ton of inventory spots, but it's also level 0, and they had virtually nothing. For reasons of magic and in-game convenience, the Cabbage Monger's character, though reincarnated as a salt miner, still mysteriously had cabbages. Which worked out beautifully because they used these to try and trip traps. The cabbage leaves and whatnot. The very room with the obelisk with the glyphs, after my wife's character got petrified, they were literally hurling cabbage leaves at the thing to try and see if they could trigger it. We got a surprise round on 3 babbles here, and as low as we are, I'm just going to take it as a free run. We got to get back to Cannock Castle here. There we are. But they get to this point where there's a room with a scroll of detect magic. And the detect magic is going to, if they're able to pick up and use the scroll successfully, it's going to stop a skeleton from reanimating, it's going to show them a secret door, and it's also going to highlight where a pull rope is in the next room, and that pull rope's only real purpose is to temporarily deactivate a pressure plate that would otherwise fill a crawl space tunnel with darts flying through. And I sort of brooded out in my head that for convenience reason, These darts are almost in like a pneumatic tube sort of endless cycle, where there are a potentially endless number of darts dropping down from somewhere, from some loading area anytime as needed, and it's large clockwork mechanisms within the stone walls of this sort of mountain cave, because it's an engineered trap in a natural cave. But it was put there long ago and it is buried in stone with no conceivable way to get there, especially at level 0. That the pressure plate is impossible to miss. But if you deactivate it, you can get through. Otherwise, the darts fly through and just go through holes at other parts of the little crawl space tunnel, and then just the holes loop around, so they just get ready and back into position. And the party finds the scroll, they use the scroll, and it all goes to wonderful effect. Gonna save in Canic Castle, and then we're gonna start unlocking silver doors. And I think that's where we'll wrap up today. Back to about 492 for AGOGG, and Orfeo needs 379. We do wish to continue. With my son's help, thou shalt go far. King of Canic Castle, very proud of his boy. And he should be, because kid can cast Antidote. We're non-magical schmucks, so ignore the fact that we're a higher level and we've been carrying these battles. But gonna make our way back down to left one here. But they get through, they find the secret compartment, they're loading up on items beautifully. Just nice to use Fireball again, not gonna lie. And then they get to the room with the pull rope. And, pardon me, it's illuminated by the same glyph that they saw with the detect magic showing the secret door. So it's sort of telegraphing that the glyph means good symbol here. And they pull the rope, and they don't know it yet, but they sort of saved themselves from a world of pain with crawling through the dart trap, which would have probably been at least one new character for each of them. Not to mention a little bit of time, taking the time to fish corpses out of the crawl space, because there's not a ton of room in there. But instead, my cabbage merchant, the guy just decides he sees a length of rope in the ceiling, and this could be useful. So he finds a way to climb up to that point in the ceiling. It's not terribly high. And he cuts the rope off right at that ceiling point, which effectively stops the only means of disabling this trap in the future. Now I should note that they get through the rest of this dungeon completely fine. They manage to handle the endgame boss, which in itself sets up an interesting plot point for later in the campaign. And that involves something specific in the Unnatural Selection supplement that I'm going to be very coy about right now, because I know the missus and the boyo are moving upstairs, and this is not a terribly large or soundproof house. But there was something that happened that could be a potential complication arising from there. Let's do some illicit gambling, because we can get in this door now. So in order to get in the door, all we gotta do is use the silver key, and the door opens. Silver key stays in the inventory, and there's a shopkeep here who has the lottery, which is my least favorite part of this game, because I'm bad at these little mini games. We can play at the lottery. I don't think you could buy lottery tickets in this game, so at least it doesn't let you spend your savings away on lotto tickets, but you can get them as auxiliary prizes for shopping at item shops and whatnot. I believe you could also pull them out of chests. So it's going to tell you it's basically a 3-spot slot machine. It's going to roll through some symbols, and then you press the button to stop them. 3 suns is going to win us a golden card. 3 stars wins the wizard's ring. And there may be other prizes. A lot of it's just free ticket. So just like the regular lottery. I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to click 3 times, and we got a slime and 2 hearts. That is nothing. But we did get a lottery ticket for 2 hearts, so we're going to keep going. We know how it's played. Let's go. Three hearts. So glad I'm recording this. I never won these. And we got an herb. Okay. That worked out far better than it ever should have. So, I'm going to say if we talk here, we're going to get some NPC dialogue. That guard guy in the helmet is literally standing in the doorway. We can't see him because we're on the interior shot and he is blocking my way out. So yeah, let's have a little chat with the absolute darkness there. That's amazing. I think there's one we can go to in Middenhall Castle as well. Going to be wrapping up soon here. We're over 45 minutes. I want to stop this shy of an hour because, I mean, even I get sick of me after an hour, right? But they get through the cave. And like I said, we stopped right there. And coming up next is character creation and getting into the big old world. I've since run a couple of side sessions with the fam, with some auxiliary characters, their characters from the first playtest. And then I ran some of the Cursed Scroll material with my wife the other day, just fleshing out more of the game world and looking at interactions of other classes and things within the world and how they sort of work and gel. I find that seeing it in-game helps me a great deal to conceptualize, and I really can't argue at this point with any time I get to just chill and game with my family and friends. But we wrapped up the session. It was a riot. Like I said, 4 hours, and it maybe felt like 2.5. Time just sort of flew by, and I didn't think about it till a day or two after. But I'm going down through my notes and just sort of reviewing and having that wonderful moment. This session was well received. My co-worker at the time was just chatting about all of the fun options that he was looking at within the game and where he'd like to take his character and where his wife would like to take her character and how much fun they had playing. And you just love moments like that where people are legitimately getting enthused and energized to play. And then it dawns on me that they succeeded in what they were doing, but there's another in a multiverse theory, there's another version of these events that would have gone down where they maybe had to turn back. As you can see, this takes us into the prison. We have a wonderful force field area down there that's barred by the gold key. This guard doesn't think we should be in the prisons of our own castle, but okay. We're going to see if we can talk to this guy, see if we can get him to the gate while I try and wrap up my conversation here. But there's a point where these characters don't succeed, and that rope is still cut. And if they don't make it to the end, the rival crawlers who had already, I had sort of storyline, had the rival crawlers finding the first few glyphs and taking half of their prize to sort of tone down the character creation stash. Do I have the jailer's key? No. Well, that dude doesn't want to talk to us unless we can bust him out. That's cool. But yeah, silver key. We'll need the gold key for doors like that. And what a crazy world it would have been. Because I almost soft-locked my characters in the opening adventure of my campaign. Just food for thought. I hope you enjoyed this little session, me babbling a bit. We are set to play that leg of the campaign this weekend coming up. I may get another side session or two in. I still have plenty of solo material and setup that I can go over. Obviously, it won't be in a linear fashion. But again, and thank you for stopping by in general, but especially if you have listened through this whole thing, you're going to find that linear fashion is just not my mode of operation. It just kind of comes as it comes, and hopefully we're following along and having fun, and if not, hopefully you're just enjoying story time here. Got some quality leveling done in Dragon Quest. Went over some really fun things going on here in my campaign world, and we're going to wrap it up here and get the wonderful press reset while turning the console off message, because if you don't, you'd lose your stuff, and that would indeed be a shame. This has been a Grumpy Old Guy Gaming. Thanking you for watching, saying take care, and we'll see you around.